Just to give you a summary, we're talking, I'm giving the challenge out of a 10-minute shift. I want you to see it up on the screen so you make sure you understand what I just said. This is a 10-minute shift, and in this, a 10-minute shift is like a shift is a time period, either a morning shift, a late shift, an 8-hour shift, a 12-hour shift. It's a certain amount of time that you designate usually to work. We want you to focus on a 10-minute segment of time that will change your life. That's why shift is another word that designates a change in the way you're going, the direction that you're heading. And I believe that as we study the Psalms, we're going to find that there's always a shift that takes place from the beginning of Psalm to the end. Not always, but a great oftentimes, there's a shift that takes place in focus. And I believe that we need to have this happen in our lives. Last week, we talked through Psalm 23 about the shift that took place in this one, was talking about God to talking to God. It says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down. He leads me. He guides me. He restores. That's talking about God. At the end of the passage is, you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It's the shift from third person to second person. And this is a really big one. I taught through that, and I got a text from Jude right here on the front row. And Jude goes, are you going to finish teaching Psalm 23 next week? I just want to say no. I'm sorry about that. It would take me weeks to finish Psalm 23. Here's the deal I'll give you. I'm not going to teach all of the Psalms. I'm not even going to teach all of any Psalm. I'm going to give you enough, though, okay? I'm going to give you enough to live every single week. But I want you to know that as you begin to live in this, it'll absolutely transform your life. When I was in either third or fourth grade, I was in a Sunday school class with one other boy. His name was Brad Anderson. Brad and I were constantly playing basketball together and things and getting in trouble together. And they couldn't find a Sunday school teacher for our class because it was just the two of us. So they asked my dad to teach the class. Who wants their dad to teach their class when they're like third or fourth grade? It's like, man, I can't even goof off in Sunday school class. And so my dad taught my Sunday school class in that time. I remember that the very first day he taught us to memorize Psalm 1. And it was like the whole year project. We were to memorize Psalm 1. Today I'm going to teach from Psalm 1. It is a powerful, what I realize now more, I was just memorizing the words back then. I now understand the meaning. That Psalm 1 is a contrast. It is the major contrast of our life between being a fruitful, prosperous life, the tree that's planted by the streams of water that yields its fruit in season. And it's contrasted to chaff, which is just kind of the dust that's in the straw. The wind blows it away. He said, which one life would you like to have? Would you like to be that tree that's planted by streams of water, that's fruitful and lasts for years? Or do you want your life and your influence to be the chaff which the wind drives away? That's the contrast. And it's the contrast between the righteous and the wicked. And I want to study it because there's a blessing in just the first two verses. And the whole of the Psalms is even set up by these two verses, I believe. It says, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. You know how you get the difference between the two? It is through not listening to the voices of everybody that's around you. It's not joining in with the crowd. It's not listening to the evening news. It's by meditating on the scriptures. That on this law, he meditates day and night. You know, there's so much about the human brain that we don't understand. There's things that we're learning constantly. It's really hard to study the human brain for one really simple reason. Like, people need it, and so you can study it after they die. You can take it out and you can study the different parts to a brain. You could study it in surgery, and in surgery they will take probes, and when you touch different probes in different spots in a brain, what you realize is different parts to a brain affect human beings in different kinds of ways. But it's really hard to study a brain and say, like, how, if a person did this, how would it affect their brain? I want us just to think about our brain, because the Psalms, I believe, are the mental health book of the Bible. It's getting your brain to be fully functioning for God. So let's think about a few things about what we know about the brain. There's a prefrontal cortex, the beginning of the brain, the front of the brain, just right behind your forehead. It's kind of the control center of the brain. In this control center of the brain, there's rational thought. There's just a whole lot of stuff that takes place. But that's not all of your brain. Most of you would say, like, when you study a brain, you look at it, like, it's easily seen to be in like two hemispheres. Have you noticed that? And people say, well, there's the left brain controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. There's a thing that's occurred, like males are different than females. The male brain, in utero, there was a bath of hormones that took place that actually changed a male brain from a female brain. What they discovered with the male brain is the male brain tends to communicate from the front, that prefrontal cortex, and it goes back in the way in which it communicates. And a female brain is just going from both sides. In fact, like even the connection between the two sides is partially severed kind of from that hormone bath. That's why your husband seems to be a half-wit. Human brains are completely different. They used to believe that a human brain was fully developed at 6 years old. Now they're realizing that our brain is not even fully developed, maybe up to age 25 years old. There's different parts to our brain. When I was in high school, I had a very, very stressful time in high school. Did anybody else have a stressful time in high school? I had a very stressful time in high school. I wish I could go back and live it with my whole brain. Because what I discovered is that part of my brain that processes emotions and helps you feel like everything's going to be all right, that wasn't developed yet in me. And so back then it just seemed like everything was not going to be all right. And things were really difficult in my life. That's the compassion that we want to have for the teenagers and things that are going on in their lives. There's so much. There is in the back of our brain, there's this place that's the fear center of our brain, the amygdala. And, so you have the front part of your brain that's rational and is making decisions, and then you have the back of your brain that's fear-centered. And sometimes you can see those in conflict with one another. Last week I took Isaac to Lawton Park. It's a skate park. He was on his scooter, and on the way there, he's telling me that he wants to make a jump on his scooter. The ramp goes up. It's about a 6-wide gap, and then there's a ramp that goes down. And he's like, I want to jump over that wide thing. And so he gets to the park, and he goes down one ramp. He's getting his speed up, getting up to that other ramp. He goes up it, and then he's getting up it, and he's getting into the air, and guess what he does? Jumps off the scooter. Whoa! What happened in that? The front of his brain is I can do this, and then the fear center took over. And there was a battle that's going on in there. Which one do I listen to? And so I watched him as he just kind of worked through that. I need some more speed. If I don't have more speed, I'm not going to be able to make the jump. If I don't jump right at the edge, then I'm not going to make the jump. If I don't raise up the front wheel, and then if I push it down, it lowers me. And he started to work through, and then the next time he jumped, he's one foot goes off, and then the next time one foot goes off, and then all of a sudden he's just figuring it out, and he makes the jump. He's whoa, ah. And then I said to him, hey, what about that one? Literally said it to him. And he tried it, and he went through the whole process all over again. The fear center is in control. Then the logic center is like, hey, I can figure this out. This is what I need to do. And then one started to dominate the other, and it's like the logic center begins to win. Well, maybe not, if you wouldn't have even been at the skate park if the logic center had been there. But do you see how this works? Some of you, your fear center dominates your entire brain. Some of you have the hunger center that dominates your entire brain. And today, what we want to look at is what would it be like if our mind was pleasing to God? If the way we thought through things was pleasing to God, that we could give our minds to Him. There's another part of the brain that recently they've been able to study, because here's an advancement that's taken place that helps the study of the brain in a big way. It's called an MRI. With an MRI, you can actually have studies. You can put a control group, and you can have, two different groups. You can put people through a study, and then you can study their brain beforehand and afterwards. And what they've actually found out is that you can do certain things, and that will change the way your brain fires, the way your brain works, and what parts of your brain are actually strongest. There's a really important part of our brain. Like, let's say in Psalm 23, the prefrontal cortex was in charge, and he said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down. He leads me. That's the rational part. How did he move to the you are with me? It wasn't just a change in third person to second person. It was literally a change, a shift in his brain to saying, God, you are with me. There's this part called the anterior cingulate. And they've been studying it. This is not a Christian group that's studying it. Two scholars, they've been studying this. One is a spiritualist and one is an atheist. And the way in which they studied this part of the brain allows a person to see God as a compassionate God. It allows us to see others outside of ourselves. You know how you can be very self-centered, and something can shift in your brain to where you can begin to think about others first, other than yourself. And wouldn't it be great is if we could be God-centered and others-centered before we were self-centered? That's a huge shift. And so what they discovered is this, that when a human being meditates for 8 to 10 minutes a day for 60 days, they can actually find a change in the anterior cingulate. That part of their body, that part of their brain shifts and it grows. You can still stick with your fear-centered part, and I'm telling you, you do that, you're going to grow it. And in fact, you're going to be more afraid a year from now than you are even right now. 2020 has probably grown every one of our fear-centered side of our brain, right? Wouldn't it be a great time right now if we said, I want to shift in my brain. I want to look at something else. I'm not teaching this today because of some study. I'm teaching it because it is the central theme of Psalms. It says, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, or stands in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And on that law he meditates day and night. Meditates. Meditation is different than study. I can study something and I can see all the parts to it. Meditation is when you immerse yourself and so like laser focus yourself in on one thing. So here's a description of meditation. The cow chewing his cud. A cow will chew on some grass, digest it, and then not be done with it. What will the cow do? It will bring it back up in a very wonderful way so that he can chew on it again. Isn't that gross? Like he chewed on it, digested it, spits it up again, chews on it again, digests it, and then spits it up again and chews on it again, and that's meditation. Meditation is when you think on a thought, you digest it, you get the health from it, then you bring it back up, and you do it all over again. And you do it over and over and over again so many times until you've gotten every bit of nutrition out of that thought. Meditation is a big, big deal. Meditation changes our minds. And so today, if you go home and Google meditation, you could be in trouble. Because it's not just the Christian church that understands the power of meditation. Others understand meditation. In Eastern religions, meditation is a huge deal. Just even in our secular culture, meditation is a big deal. But here is the difference between Eastern religion meditation or secular meditation and Christian meditation. In Eastern meditation, it's detaching from thoughts and focusing on self. And in Christian meditation, it's detaching from self and focusing on God. That is a huge difference. I want to show you this because these are the scriptures from the Psalms. It's not your pastor talking about it. This is me just sharing. Psalm 48, verse 9. The key focus is meditating on God's love. Within your temple, O God, we meditate on our breathing? No, we meditate on your unfailing love. In yoga, that's what we're taught, like focus in on your breathing. You know what that gets us to do? It gets us more self-centered. We want to focus in on God's unfailing love. God, your love is incredible. And if we begin to think about and meditate over and over, like give 10 minutes to the unfailing love of God, no matter what you go through, no matter where it feels like you're failing, and no matter how many times you feel like you have failed God, His love is unfailing towards us. And what the Scripture teaches us, you meditate on that. You think about that. You focus on it, and it'll change your life. So we focus, number one, on the unfailing love of God. Second thing that we need to focus on is we meditate on God's Word, not on humans' words. It says this in Psalm 119, verse 23, even though princes sit plotting against me, your servant will meditate on your statutes. Can you imagine that? Princes are people that are in influence, that are in charge. Could you imagine if you walked in and there were a group of people that were in charge and they were talking against you? Imagine that. You walk into the lunchroom, you walk around the table, and everybody is talking about you that has influence on you. How would that make you feel? I think it'd make us feel pretty rotten. Some of you have been through something like that. And maybe even you were wounded enough that you continue to meditate on those words. What he says is this: I'm not going to do that. I'm going to meditate on your decrees, on your statutes. I'm going to meditate on your word and what you say and who you say I am. It's a huge shift in our life. Many of you have lived your entire life focusing on what other people say against you. This shift occurs on what God says about us. The third one, what was the first one? God's unfailing love. Second one is what God thinks about us. And lastly, meditate on God's mighty deeds. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. Sometimes we focus and we spend all of our life focusing on what we've done or what we've not done. And God says it will change your life when you meditate on what I've done. Because here's the truth, God can do more in seconds than we can do in a lifetime. You may have messed up your life. God can change your life. We need to focus on the things that God has done in our lives. So here's one thing I'd like to challenge you to do. Sit down for a little bit and just begin to write down moments in your life when God came through for you. Moments in your life when it seemed like everything was against you, and then God showed up and God changed it all. And then not move on to the next one. You spend 10 minutes thinking about what your life would be like if God hadn't showed up, if God hadn't done that. I'm telling you, you'll begin to praise Him. Begin to focus on God's mighty deeds, not just in your own life. Begin to focus on God's mighty deeds in the lives of your families, in the lives of your friends. What would it be like if, as a country, we spent every day for 10 minutes a day focusing on what God's done for America? I challenge you on that. Instead of listening to the news and what the news says is going on in America, why don't you think about what God has done in America, the amazing things that God, and the prospering of our country. I will meditate on your mighty deeds. Psalm 8 is actually doing this. So Psalm 8, verses 3 and 4, the psalmist says this: when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place. What is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? Have you ever been outside? Have you ever been to look at the stars? And have you felt this, like, I am so small, I am so significant? You know, when we begin to see the sun and the moon and the stars, which God, like He set them in place, He put them in place, it would be tempting to feel like we're insignificant. But verse 4 says, it's what is man that you are mindful of him. That word mindful is so similar to meditate. It's like, God, what is my life that you meditate on me? You are mindful of me, that you care for me, that you think of me. That's our God. And I'm telling you, there's got to be a shift that takes place in our life. Whatever part of your brain that you use will become stronger. You can continue to live in fear, and it'll get worse. It'll just get stronger and stronger and stronger. You can still live in your prefrontal cortex and try to figure out God, and sometimes that'll take you towards God. I'm telling you, sometimes that even might take you away from God. There's got to be this place where we say, God, I trust you. I worship you. I receive the care that you have for me. And when we love God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our strength, all of our mind. So today's sermon could be like, what'd the preacher preach on today? Like meditation, what'd you do? Like I fell asleep for 10 minutes right in the middle of it. Like this could be the worst sermon you've ever had. Or this literally could change your life. And what's the difference? Like if you do it. So the study finds 8 to 10 minutes a day. If you meditate for 60 days, you will actually find that the anterior cingulate of your brain will change. Are you up for it? Would you like that? Would you like to be that person that trusts in the compassion of God, that looks to others, is not self-centered, not focused on yourself? So let's come up, and we're just going to sing that song once ago, It Is Well With My Soul. If it's not well, then today, just give your life to Him here. Let's stand and sing.
Through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. And through it all, my eyes are on you. And it is well. Let's sing that again. Through it all. And through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you. And it is well. It is well. So let go. So let go. My soul and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. Let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. The waves and wind still know His name. The waves and wind still know His name. So it is well. Let's sing through it all. So through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. And through it all, my eyes are on you. And it is well with me.
In the 1840s and 50s, when wagon trains were heading out west, one of the pioneers posted a sign, and it said, "Pick your rut carefully, you'll be in it for the next 50 miles." I want to just say the same thing to each one of us. You might have been in a rut, and that rut is worry. That rut might be greed. That rut might be complaining. I don't know what exactly your rut is. But this is a series that's to change the ruts in our lives. Like, I firmly believe that when we get our eyes off of ourselves and get our eyes upon Him, we start to be the church. We start to be the people that God created us to be. So I pray that the words of your mouth and the meditations of our hearts would be pleasing to our God, our rock and our Redeemer. Go and be the church. Amen.